I always thought dropping my father's friend off at his house would be a simple, uneventful errand, but every time I did it, something inside me shifted. The drive itself was quiet, the hum of the engine and the soft glow of street lights keeping me company. I could feel the tension before I even reached his gate, an odd mix of anticipation and guilt that I couldn't explain. He would sit beside me, casually chatting about small things, work, the weather, his latest hobby, but I noticed the way he looked at me, lingering a little too long, a subtle smile playing at the edge of his lips. I tried not to think too much of it, telling myself it was just my imagination, but my heart always betrayed me. Pulling up to his house, the familiar sight of the front gate and warm light spilling from the windows should have felt ordinary, but it never did. I could feel my pulse quicken as he unbuckled his seatbelt and turned to me with that same calm, confident smile that always seemed to catch me off guard. "Come inside for a second," he would ask, voice smooth and low, carrying that hint of mischief that always made me hesitate. My mind screamed at me to refuse, to just say goodnight and drive away, but something in me, the curiosity, the strange thrill of it, made me nod. The air inside his house felt different. It wasn't just warm, it was heavy in a way that made me hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow. He led me down a narrow hallway, and I couldn't help but notice the subtle ways the room seemed designed to draw attention, the soft lighting, the faint scent of something rich and musky that reminded me of late nights and secrets. My stomach twisted in a mix of excitement and fear, but I followed anyway, caught between wanting to flee and wanting to see where this would go. He gestured toward a closed door at the end of the hall. "Just in here," he said casually, as if it were no big deal. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, my thoughts spinning. I told myself it was wrong. I reminded myself that he was my father's friend, that I should respect that boundary, but the sound of his voice, the way he looked at me, made all my rational thoughts falter. Inside the room, everything seemed quieter, more intimate. The dim lighting cast soft shadows, and I noticed small details, the way the furniture was arranged, the faint hum of a fan in the corner, the smell of his cologne lingering in the air. My heart was pounding, but I tried to focus on anything else to keep from completely losing myself in the tension. He leaned back slightly, casually observing me with those knowing eyes, and I felt my resolve crumble bit by bit. He didn't make a move immediately, but the air between us was charged, heavy with unspoken words. Every small gesture, the tilt of his head, the slight shift closer, the quiet laugh at something I said, felt magnified, pulling me in despite every warning in my mind. I caught myself staring at him, caught between admiration, confusion, and a strange longing I didn't fully understand. My thoughts ran in circles. Why am I here? I shouldn't be here. And yet, I want to be. For a moment, time seemed to slow. I could feel the subtle brush of his hand as he adjusted something on the table nearby, the faint warmth of his presence filling the room. I was acutely aware of my own breathing, the rapid heartbeat in my chest, the way my mind couldn't stop replaying the moments that had led me here. The guilt and the thrill intertwined, creating a tension I could almost taste. And yet, despite knowing I should turn and walk out, I couldn't move. I stayed there, frozen, caught in the strange pull between right and wrong, curiosity and caution, fear and desire. And as he smiled at me, a slow, knowing smile, I realized that nothing about this night would ever feel ordinary again. The room felt smaller as I stood there, every nerve on edge, every sound magnified. His presence seemed to fill the space, and I could feel the air between us charged with something unspoken. I tried to focus on the mundane, the way the soft light caught the edges of the furniture, the faint hum of the fan, but I couldn't ignore the subtle shift in the energy around us. He leaned slightly closer, just enough for me to notice, and I felt my pulse quicken, a mixture of fear and excitement twisting in my chest. He didn't say much, just a quiet comment about something trivial, but it carried that same intensity that had drawn me here in the first place. I could feel the weight of his gaze, the way it lingered on me longer than it should have, and I was caught between wanting to flee and wanting to stay. My thoughts raced, tangled between what I knew was right and what I inexplicably wanted. "This can't be happening," I whispered to myself inside my head, but every instinct seemed to betray me. There was a subtle intimacy in the way he moved, the way he spoke, the quiet confidence that seemed to envelop the room. I found myself noticing little things, the curve of his smile, the way his hand brushed against the edge of the table, the calm control in his movements. I couldn't help but be drawn to it, even as a part of me screamed that I should leave, that I was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. He stepped closer, almost casually, yet the effect was anything but casual. I could feel the tension building, the quiet, dangerous thrill of proximity that made my stomach twist and my mind whirl. Every word, every glance, felt like it carried weight far beyond what was being said. I tried to focus on the physical details of the room, on anything tangible, but I kept catching myself staring at him, caught in the pull of something I wasn't ready to name. My heart raced as he made a small gesture, adjusting a chair or reaching for something on the table, and I felt my body respond in ways I didn't fully understand. The guilt and excitement twisted together, a confusing cocktail of emotions I couldn't untangle. I reminded myself of boundaries, of the trust my father had placed in him, yet the magnetic pull of the moment kept me rooted in place. I could feel a subtle change in his demeanor, a quiet teasing in his tone that made my stomach tighten. He didn't force anything, didn't rush, yet the tension was undeniable. The room seemed to shrink around us, every shadow and flicker of light amplifying the unspoken connection. I felt my resolve slipping, my internal monologue a chaotic mess of desire, guilt, and curiosity. Even as I tried to steady myself, to regain some semblance of control, he continued to close the invisible distance between us, and I found myself leaning in without meaning to. My mind screamed at me to stop, but my body betrayed my rational thoughts. The thrill of the forbidden, the intoxicating mix of risk and desire, made it impossible to think clearly. I was acutely aware of every subtle movement, every lingering glance, and every unspoken word that hung in the air. Time seemed to stretch, the seconds dragging as we existed in that suspended state, caught between the ordinary and something far more charged. I couldn't tell if it was courage or recklessness that kept me there, standing in that dimly lit room, but I knew that something had shifted irreversibly. The familiar sense of safety had vanished, replaced by a heady mix of tension, curiosity, and something dangerously close to longing. And then, almost imperceptibly, he smiled, just a small, knowing smile, and I felt the final thread of my hesitation fray. I wasn't ready to give in completely, and yet I knew that nothing about this night would ever feel the same again. I was trapped in the pull of the moment, caught between leaving and staying, and the suspense of what might come next tightened around me like a vice. The room held its breath, and so did I, every fiber of my being aware that the balance between right and wrong, guilt and desire, had already begun to tilt. The quiet in the room was almost unbearable, every sound amplified, every movement charged with meaning. I could feel the air between us vibrating with a tension I couldn't ignore. My chest felt tight, heart hammering as I tried to steady myself, to anchor my thoughts to something rational. But it was useless. The moment had taken on a life of its own, a silent force drawing me in even as my mind screamed that I shouldn't be here. He moved closer again, slow and deliberate, his presence filling the space in a way that left me acutely aware of every nerve, every breath. I tried to focus on the room, the soft lighting, the faint hum of the fan, but I couldn't. My attention was entirely on him, on the subtle power in his posture, the quiet intensity in his gaze. There was no rush, no pressure, only the magnetic pull of proximity that made it impossible to think clearly. My thoughts raced in chaotic loops. Guilt, desire, curiosity, fear, they all collided inside me, leaving me dizzy with conflicting emotions. I shouldn't be here. I can't be here. And yet, I whispered to myself, though no sound left my lips. My rational mind struggled to assert control, but it was drowned out by the pull of the moment, the strange thrill of standing so close to someone I wasn't supposed to want, someone I wasn't supposed to feel like this for. He smiled softly, just enough for me to notice, and my body responded before my mind could catch up. The room seemed to shrink, the dim light casting shadows that mirrored the tension between us. I felt his presence in every corner, in every subtle movement, in the brush of air as he adjusted his position. I could feel the weight of his gaze, not demanding, not forcing, but simply holding me in place, making it impossible to retreat entirely. I tried to step back, to reclaim some semblance of composure, but the pull was too strong. Each step I considered was met with an invisible tether, something that held me suspended between what I knew was right and what I inexplicably wanted. My mind spiraled, questions, doubts, fears, but beneath them all was a strange, undeniable longing that refused to be ignored. We existed in that fragile, electrified space for what felt like hours, though it was likely only minutes. Every glance, every slight shift in posture, carried weight. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt before, vulnerable and aware of my own reactions in a way that left me dizzy. And yet, there was an intimacy to it, a connection that wasn't physical but no less real. I could sense it in the quiet, in the pauses, in the way our energies seemed to intertwine without a single word being said. Eventually, the moment stretched to its limit. I knew I had to leave, to step away from the line I was dangerously close to crossing. My body trembled with the effort of pulling myself together, of reclaiming control over my own actions. He didn't stop me, didn't protest. He simply watched, that same calm, knowing look on his face, as if he understood that the tension had reached its natural conclusion, for now. I walked toward the door, every step weighted with thought and emotion. The hallway felt colder, emptier, but I carried with me the memory of the room, the weight of his presence, the thrill of the forbidden that lingered like a shadow. I could hear my own breathing, feel the rapid pulse in my chest, and know that something fundamental had shifted inside me. Before leaving entirely, I turned briefly, catching his eyes one last time. There was a silent acknowledgement, a shared understanding that something had changed, something that could never be erased. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The connection was there, lingering in the space between us, a secret neither of us would voice but both would carry. I stepped out into the cool night air, the quiet of the street enveloping me. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, emotions tangled in a way I had never experienced before. I knew that nothing would ever feel the same again, that the ordinary, the safe, the predictable had been replaced with something complex, intoxicating, and forbidden. And as I walked away, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next, knowing deep down that this night had changed me forever.